would you change your position now on Martinez?
Come on.
I think he's been brilliant. I think he's to be that small and play centre back. You've obviously got to be a special player, a good player. Now, I didn't think someone at that size could cope in the Premier League, and he has coped. I think he's been brilliant.
Do you feel that he's there for the long haul? This is a long-term plan, because it's quite similar in his story with the Arteta story, where he kind of had to get rid of the dead weight, had to get rid of some big characters.
Yeah, I'm surprisingly I actually agree with you there. Like, I think that there was differences. I mean, you've made a few mistakes this season on, Martinez in particular, but I think you are right in that this does feel different for different reasons. Jose, he's only going to be there for 3 years maximum, 4 years at a push. As a fan, you can't think, well, we're probably going to take 3 years to get anywhere, and then he's leaving straight away. With Ole, there was always that thing in the media and in the back of your mind as a fan. I'm someone who absolutely loved Solskjaer and loved, getting to those finals or semi-finals and getting second in the league, but there was always part of you that thought, is he up to this? And I think, not just as fans, but you say it as media, people feel that with Ten Hag already. People believe in him. And the way that, journalists write about him and the way that fans talk about him and the way that opposition fans talk about him, it's like, oh no, United look like they might be good again. And I think that matters. I think that gets into the dressing room. And when you see the way he's handled things, you mentioned Maguire and Ronaldo, but even things like the Sancho situation, where I've never seen a player at that level drop out of a team for 3 months for non-injury related reasons. I've never seen that. And yet somehow, not only did he manage to sort of, not cover it up, but he never allowed it to be this gigantic story. He never lamented the fact that he didn't have the player to pick. Imagine if Jose was the manager. Look at the Man United squad at the minute. That midfield is decimated. We've got literally Sabitzer and Fred available in those deep positions and no one else. We've got Eriksen and Van der Beek and McTominay all out, sort of long term. But you wouldn't know that from Ten Hag, because he sits there, he tells you all the things he likes about his team, and he sets up a team to win. And I think that's such a difference in mentality that we've not seen. We can genuinely sit here and think, this is a guy that knows how to do it. He's done it before. He's done it in the Netherlands, and it sort of feels like a proper manager is at Manchester United.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Yeah, we spoke to Ten Hag earlier on the season. Quite a few United fans, and you'll probably be getting it as well, giving us a bit of stick at the moment because they thought we were giving him a really hard time, and they want us to go and speak to him again, or they want us to go and speak to other managers. But after that Brentford game, when it was 4-0, if you remember, all hell was breaking loose. It was the end of the world, it felt like, at United. The owners were coming under massive pressure. The protests were big. We were playing Liverpool at, obviously, Old Trafford. In Liverpool at that point, we didn't realise that they were really bad. And we thought they were quite good, do you know what I mean? Because
like
what happened last season. So I think at that point...
Those protests went quiet, didn't they? Quite quickly.
They're all right now. The green and gold scarf.
They were there in 22 when we just won the Champions League.
If you think about it, what happens that week, we request to speak to the owners first and foremost. We said, look, this is the time now for the owners to speak, and we want to go and interview them. We requested the owners. The owners never don't stand up. Yeah. So we said we have to speak to someone prominent this week at the club. We have to. We cannot just go into the game with everything that's going on without giving a really, challenging interview of somebody. Erik Ten Hag was the person who stood up. Manchester United obviously put him up, but Erik Ten Hag stood up. He went up massively in our estimations that week, not just about how he dealt with us personally, off camera, how he answered the questions, but obviously then went on to win the game on the Monday and actually turn it around. It was an unbelievable thing. And I know that some United fans think that we give him a really hard time. We had to that week. Manchester United fans were giving the club the hardest time. He was the person, the senior individual that the players, that the club put up. We had to ask him those questions. It was impossible not to. So I think for me, from that point of view, in the most difficult moment I've seen a manager in recent times, he stood up. He stood up, he threw his chest out, and he believed he should be there. And the question I want to ask you is, would you change your position now on Martinez?
Come on.
I think he's been brilliant. I think he's... To be that small and play centre-back, you've obviously got to be a special player, a good player. Now, I didn't think someone at that size could cope in the Premier League, and he has coped. I think he's been brilliant. I think he's when I said before about United's spirit, I think he's been a big part of that. You see him sort of... I think there was a game I saw a few weeks ago where he was actually sub. And someone scored maybe a late goal, and he was right involved in this only like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And you obviously see him in the World Cup, Argentinian. He's got that fight. I think him, Casemiro coming in it feels more powerful, more stronger. But I didn't think a centre back could be able to cope that size. Now listen, I think if you can still get exposed in the air, that has to happen at some stage. But the best players, every player's got weaknesses. the best players hide them or make sure they don't get exposed. And I think he's a really good player. And he surprised me that the way he's coped, or basically how teams can't basically get out of.
Is that a little moonwalk that we're just seeing from
I've got no problem. I can admit when I'm wrong.
You'd have Homer
Except Arsenal are going to win the league. But what I would say about Ten Hag, there's something about him, and you mightn't like this reference in some ways, but it reminds me a little bit of when Rafa Benitez first come into Liverpool, in that you don't get much out of him in the press conference at all, and because you don't get much out of him, you're thinking, does he really know what he's doing? You know, and it's almost like he's not giving too much out, but he knows exactly what's going on. Yeah. He knows what he's doing on the pitches, the changes he makes from the side of the pitch, and they almost play on the fact that their English is not great, and they don't give too much away. But behind the scenes, we knew it's sort of our manager, he knew what he was doing. I'm sure, obviously, this guy looks exactly what he knows what he's doing. But there was just one question I wanted to ask you about the actual style of football. It's not a criticism. What I would say is, in the big games, United have almost been the underdog in that they've allowed the other team to have the ball and they've won games on the counter-attack. I think, you know, against obviously the Arsenal game you won at Old Trafford, the City game is similar, I'd probably say. The Liverpool game at Old Trafford was similar. I think that's brilliant management, clever tactically. We don't have the players to go right up against these and play the football that we want. But he's come from Ajax, and that is that style of football he wants to play. So when you're talking about getting to the next level, do you think it's a case of actually keep what he's doing, or do you think he will have to make that step where Man United are the dominant team in a game?
I think he's doing this because of the personnel at his disposal. If you look at those first two games, David De Gea was playing the ball out from the back every 2 minutes. He was kicking it short, you know, getting it back. He was exposed multiple times against Brentford, and then you watch the Liverpool game, De Gea only went long. And I think he realises that there are limitations to the way he wants to play because of the squad he's inherited. And I think eventually his style, or it was certainly Ajax, was to play that really high front foot, high possession stuff. You look at his possession stats, they were, you know, sort of through the roof at Ajax. But I don't think we've quite got that team there ready yet. And I think when we do, I mean, the goalkeeper's a big one, and obviously David De Gea is a club legend, and he's done so many great things. I think he was the best goal in the world for multiple seasons, but he can't play out from the back the way the top goalkeepers can. And when you have that, I think Arsenal exposed that better than anyone the other week. I think that they just pressed him, and they pressed the people receiving the ball from him. Wan-Bissaka was another one, and you just thought, there's still some weak links here. And I think there's some, you know, he's massively improved players like Wan-Bissaka, but you can't fundamentally change what a player is, I don't think. And I think that, you know, give him another transfer window or two, and you'll see us going head to. I think the Tottenham game, I know they tend to sit back, but that Tottenham game at Old Trafford was much more like what we would like to see against Arsenal and Chelsea and City, where we did dominate possession, we did dominate the chances, we limited Tottenham to almost nothing in that game. And I think that even though it was only 2-0, Rashford could have scored a hat-trick, and it was probably the most impressive performance I've seen from United in a handful of seasons because of how complete it was and how controlling it was. And I don't know if you'd admit the same, but it was one of those stifling performances.
We've been done a couple of times this season, but the Man United game, that was the best performance against us, including what Arsenal did to us. Yeah.
But I want to just pick up on this point of style at Manchester United. You know, I'm not going to quote an Everton fan, but to say that...
I know, I'll let you.
Honestly, the last thing that I want to see at Manchester United is 8 million passes along the back and through midfield. I swear, I do not want to see that. It was driving me crazy on Sunday watching City not use Haaland the way in which I think he should be used. So the idea that Erik Ten Hag should try and then become what would be a Manchester City or a really dominant possession team. We will dominate. Manchester United should dominate possession against probably 85% of the league. No problem with that, because the other teams, to be fair, will drop off at Old Trafford. Yeah. We're better than them and we can keep possession. When we're playing against Manchester City, or when we're playing against Liverpool at Anfield, or when we're playing against Arsenal away, honestly, I wouldn't worry too much for the entirety of the next 50 years or however long I'm alive. It won't be 50 years, I don't think, because I'm 48 now.
Oh, no.
20 years.
No, 20 years. Honestly, I would happily watch us play counter-attacking football with real speed. I was watching Ronaldo, Tevez and Rooney play counter-attacking football at Arsenal in Champions League semi-finals when we were unbelievable, by the way. So this idea that Manchester United fans should wish for this, you know, we need to dominate the play, we need to turn, you know, he needs to go that step up. Forget that. We don't. What we need to do is just get better at what we're doing currently.